I had to stop recording for a bit because I got a really sexy message from this guy. I had to answer it, okay? Where was I? Where was I before I was interrupted by a really super hot, sexy text? I don't know what Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson would say about the planet Ceres, but it's this planet that was discovered relatively recently between Mars and Jupiter, and it's named after the goddess of harvest. So having this planet of harvest, of food, of mother, you know, because Demeter or Ceres, the goddess, that was kind of her role. She is best known for basically the myth of Persephone. So her role is in the myth as the grieving mother, and because she was grieving all the crops on earth, because she was the goddess of harvest, she's like, I don't give a shit about like the harvest. I don't care if anybody's gonna eat or not. My daughter's missing. I don't know what the fuck's happening with my daughter. I see Ceres as a planet of what we consider like almost stereotypical women's work. Home, motherhood, nourishing your family through like daily meals and like, you know, just taking care of them. And that is like really strong in my chart, which is really funny because I don't cook.
Didn't you say your dad gave you a nickname when you were really young, like Death's Doom and Ninja Swords or something like that? Am I getting right? So there's this kind of rawness and fierceness when it comes to Pluto. I identify as kind of an existential astrologer in that I feel like my job is just to help you grapple with these things. I think the solution, if you're a Pluto babe, is just to find other people who can go there, you know, go to those deeper layers, but it's sort of rare, you know, so anyone can be a Pluto babe.
Food isn't just about, you know, like eating like a piece of chicken. Food is about hunger. We say things like, oh, that's food for thought. In Catholic Mass, you eat a piece of, what is it, like a cracker? It's food, but you eat it as like the body of Christ. And it's food to nourish your spiritual hunger. Food is about what you hunger for.
So we had talked before about rectification. So you had wondered, is this the right birth time for me? And understandably, because you feel like you've got more of a dark aesthetic, or you've just been kind of drawn into these roles that are more shadowy. But I was still kind of stuck because Pluto's just not doing a whole lot in your chart. I mean, it's in the 5th house, so it's showy, okay? And it's trine Venus, so we have that. But it's not like really loud, you know, it's not really loud and prominent. And so someone who identifies as really attracting a lot of shadow material or being turned on by that stuff, I would expect a more Plutonian signature. But what we do have instead is Ceres being that lead planet in your midheaven stellium in Pisces, conjunct Mars. So I'm like, okay, yeah, like she's bringing through more of the shadowy feminine. And so I keep doing this where I'm looking at a chart saying, well, I wouldn't expect Ceres to be that big or that obvious. And then I look at your chart and I'm like, oh, like it actually seems like a really potent visible force in your chart. Ceres in Pisces, you know, Ceres could be in any of the 12 signs in someone's chart. Pisces is a sign that has themes of loss and sacrifice, okay, and also spirituality. And the thing is, you have this chart for your whole life, so you're going to wind up acting out all those themes. You know, it's like not just the good stuff. You're going to get to do the bad stuff and the negative stuff along with the highs before you figure out the ideal way to work with this energy. Because you have Ceres conjunct Mars, okay, so Mars is this sexual energy or this very embodied energy of hunger. But they have big appetites. Like, they need to eat, right? Like.
Well, that's so interesting that you say, like, big appetite, because I've actually been hospitalized as a kid for eating too much.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Literally eating too much. Like my grandfather, he was babysitting me, and he got like a
Yeah.
adult portion of noodles, and he was only supposed to give me a little. But I thought it was
Yeah.
so yummy that I kept eating it, and he thought it was really cute that a little kid kept eating. And so I had to go
Yeah.
to the hospital because, I was like 3 or 4, and I ate like a
Yeah.
huge bowl of noodles. A lot of
Right.
people accuse me of being like an insufferable foodie because
Okay.
I need it at a certain temperature, and I don't like taking food back home because then I have to reheat it in the microwave.
Yeah.
And I want things to be hot. I hate cold food.
Do you relate to that idea of being kind of like a bossy bitch about your food? Or, like if you're in charge of it, like it
Yes.
just, because it's sounding like it needs to be a certain way.
So when I would do like Yelp reviews of restaurants, like I was like really, really harsh on every restaurant because like I was so exacting. But I kind of felt as though I have a very specific preference about temperature, texture, flavors, all of that stuff, and quantity. So I
Right.
mean, my criteria of food is actually pickier than my criteria of men. Going to think of it.
I love this. Okay, I have so much to say about this. One thing we can say about the sign of Pisces, where you have Ceres and Mars, is that it's the most sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it can really perceive subtle differences in things. So a lot of people, might eat the food and be like, "What are you talking about? Like, it tastes
Yes.
fine. Why are you being so particular? Because the temperature is fine, the flavor's fine." But see, you might actually have some exalted perceptive ability to taste food, right? To know how things should be. And I love that you're very aggressive about it. I don't want to say hostile, but you're very Marsy about it, in that there's this kind of perceived competition out there of like, who's going to do this right? Who's going to get this perfect, and who can please me?
Basically.
Do you connect to the idea of food being a drug? Like, is it a way to... Okay.
Yes, I definitely use it the way Tony Soprano uses food. He would always he would always people would accuse him of killing himself with food. I don't have many addictions besides, actually my only one is food. There has to be meat involved.
There has to be meat involved?
Mm-hmm.
I think that has a lot to do with Ceres being conjunct Mars in your chart, because typically with Pisces, you're going to hear me start to talk about the spiritualization of food,
Mm-hmm.
right? As someone having a spiritual relationship to food. But let me just tell you, like, if Mars is involved, if it's lots of fire signs, that's where you see the meat eater, like the unapologetic meat eater.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these animals can die for my for my taste, right? So, and I personally have Ceres in Leo, and I am a failed vegetarian. I tried so many times, and I was so disappointed in myself. And when I finally started working with Ceres, and I'm like, I have Ceres in Leo. Like, I love
No wonder.
meat. My body loves meat. So Pisces is also the sign most associated with drug use. But as my teacher likes to say, anything can be a drug. So TV can be a drug
Mm-hmm.
if you watch 8 hours a day and don't really do much else with your life. Because it's in the 10th house, that makes it very visible. And so sort of like Ceres is at the noon of your chart,
Mm-hmm.
when the sun is highest in the sky. Okay, so way up there at the top of the chart. So planets that are in your 10th house, you wind up doing them as a career. It's like something that's just known about you. And so would you say that people kind of know you as the food chick? Or
I mean, my channel is about eating, my YouTube channel, which is where I'm, I guess, the most visible in the world in a lot of ways.
So your first venture out into the public eye has to do with food
Mm-hmm.
and wine. Okay, very Ceres and Pisces, right? And wine also has a particular association with Pisces, so it's kind of funny. I just have to ask about fish, because we're talking about Pisces. And Pisces has so much to do with the ocean. So what's your take on fish? What do you think?
Love sushi, love sashimi. To be honest, like if it's animal flesh, I love it.
Yeah, right.
But
So
without a
no
doubt-
difference between fish and meat. It's kind of
Exactly.
either good. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is how Ceres is an archetype of mom in the chart. Okay, so this is really interesting because most astrologers, if they want to know about a client's mom, they're going to look at the moon. So you have moon in Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have Ceres and Pisces, and those are opposite signs, but they both say a lot about mother in your chart. So let's talk about Virgo. Was your mother very critical?
Super.
Super critical. So that's Virgo, right? So your experience growing up was one of someone kind of always telling you what was wrong, right?
Yes, she was a total tiger mom. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So very ambitious on your behalf and
Extremely critical about, and she would always put me on a diet, actually, because
yeah.
she thought that I was overweight. I
Right.
wasn't.
Virgo is this energy of diminishing, like attenuating and being very economical, right? So no one can really fuss over unimportant details like 5 pounds like a Virgo can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Virgo is just obsessed with these little choices. Ceres represents who your mom actually was in the world. If you look at the charts of your siblings, you might be surprised to see that they had, like, everyone has their own unique childhood. Did you feel growing up that you kind of longed for her? Because a lot of people with Ceres and Pisces, they have this sense that, like, mother wasn't there, and it might not have been mother's fault because she had to work, but the sense of loss around mother.
I would say so. Like, she definitely wasn't there a lot. After the age of 5, when we immigrated to America.
Ceres conjunct Mars. Would you say your mom was like an angry person? Did she have an anger problem?
I think so. I think she was extremely frustrated because she was an extremely intelligent woman, and
Yeah.
she lived a very, I guess, elite life in
Yeah.
Korea. And then when she emigrated to America, so she lost all of that.
Right.
And I think it's very frustrating for a very well-educated woman used to a certain lifestyle to lose that,
Yeah.
lose status, and also she was a divorced woman, so that's extra.
Yeah. Would you say she felt like she kind of had to go out and make it and do all these traditional man type things of like setting up the household and being the breadwinner? And
Yeah, I would say so, for sure.
do you think she feels victimized by that? You know, like it wasn't exactly her choice. Like,
Oh, I'm sure. I'm so
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I think she's very duty driven, and she
Yeah.
felt that duty was a burden on her.
right. In your chart, you have Ceres conjunct Mars, right? And it's opposing Saturn. So that's a huge other piece of the puzzle that we haven't really gone into. I think we inherit our mother's rhythm. So we've been talking about food, but what I think Ceres is really about is personal rhythm and daily ritual. And these are things for which there are almost no positive archetypes in Western culture. It's kind of like, oh, daily routine. Like you have to squeeze in all these things during the day. And it's like a checklist. And so often self-care doesn't get to go on the list, or, you know, things that are just pleasurable. And we think of routine as kind of boring versus like a daily ritual, which could be an empowering act. Like I light the incense every morning, or something that has a lot of beauty and comfort and familiarity to it. I mean, I certainly didn't grow up with any positive rituals. Did you? Like,
No.
that is how I think Ceres works positively in every person's chart, right? Like everyone has kind of an ideal rhythm that they have to follow. And so yours is such a fun, fascinating mix in that Ceres is in Pisces. And so on the one hand, that's the rhythm of a mystic. Like that's someone who can't really follow a schedule or be on time or work in an ordered world. You know, like Pisces is about really going with the flow and this kind of oceanic rhythm. So there might be lots of times kind of like under the waves, you disappear and then you pop back up and then you disappear again for a while, right? It's a very remote kind of rhythm, like someone who lives apart from the world. But then that Mars puts a very different flavor on it, in that you might be very hard on yourself, right? You might be extremely assertive and aggressive and always kind of like pushing yourself to do more in your daily routine. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes, actually, it makes perfect sense.
there's a way that those two can work harmoniously, right? Like if you were doing very Pisces things, you could marshal that energy to get a lot of Pisces stuff done. But if you're trying to use that energy to get Virgo stuff done, you're like driving yourself crazy, I guess. And with the Saturn opposition, it just looks like there's a lot of dampers on your personal rhythm, okay? That you might experience most of what you have to do in a day as like deadening to your personal rhythm, right? There's all these kind of like endless tasks and the day job and all that stuff. We inherit everything to do with Ceres from mom. So like in the first 5 years of life, whoever mom was, right? Whoever mom was when we came out of the womb, whoever mom was when we were like 3 months old and dependent on her for everything, and we don't even understand that she's a separate being. Whatever mom's rhythm was, that's what we now carry around. Okay, so like in my own case, I have Ceres and Leo, and my mom is an artist, and she's very pleasure seeking, right? Like she just goes after all the shiny things. And I have tried so hard to kind of beat that rhythm out of me. Why can't I just like stay in one place and do boring things and do like logical things? And I'm always running after different art projects and stuff like that. So in your case, what it looks like is that, you know, Ceres and Pisces looks like mom maybe felt victimized, right? Like just by circumstance. That's a very Pisces position, right? Like I'm not strong enough to combat all these elements. And that Mars and Pisces definitely like can carry a lot of anger about that, you know, that feeling of victimization. And yet Saturn, that Saturn opposition to the whole thing, there's that duty, right? Like, so, but she still did her duty. She didn't fall apart. Doesn't sound like she became an alcoholic or, you know, went into an institution. Like she got the job, she provided for you, she gave you a life, right? She was consistently there. So in your personal life and rhythm, you also have the balance of all these things to contend with.
Whenever I'm like reading stuff about spirituality or learning stuff about being a witch, I find that I'm very regimented. Like I can be quite disciplined when it comes to things like that. But when it comes to things like studying for like a math test, I'm just like, I give zero fucks. Whatever.
Right. So that is a great example of how that Pisces energy can work for you. So if it's about spirituality or mysticism or the occult or anything like that, your Mars is engaged, right? Like your Mars is what gives you lots of energy, and it's in Pisces. So you got to speak that Pisces language to get that energy on your side. So you would raise the question, will Ceres help me lose weight, right? Like, is this a weight loss planet? My whole idea with doing these readings was to help liberate women from this idea that the only reason we eat food is to have a killer bod or something. Like, I don't think that's what the higher spiritual purpose of food is. You know, I have a whole theory on that. Like, Ceres in a lot of different signs, I feel like it can tell people just to eat with their heart, you know, like follow your heart, follow your own sensibilities. But when Ceres is connected to Saturn in any way, like if Ceres is in Capricorn, I feel like there's such a push for you to do things within limits, okay? So because your Ceres is opposed to Saturn, that is actually a life lesson that you have as well.
Oh my God.
Okay?
So basically, like, one of my life lessons is to not gorge on food.
I mean, that story you told about having to be hospitalized as a kid because of the overeating, I mean, that's pretty incredible. So the thing with astrology, when you have an opposition, the ideal is not to choose. You have to find a way to incorporate both, right? So you have to find a way to be in that natural Piscean rhythm of following your hungers, you know, and really developing that. But you also have to do it within limits. That's the Saturn in Virgo. I mean, that is so much just like eat sensibly, eat a balanced diet, you know, eat the same amount of calories every day. That's just so like hardcore dry Virgo.
Oh. I don't know. That's a huge challenge of mine, to be honest. Each day, if I eat normally, I probably consume double the calories of most women. I can easily eat like 5,000 or more calories a day. So So don't do that,
I mean,
basically.
oh, I have so much to say that I could say. I mean, honestly, like, I just don't, I personally don't care how much anyone weighs. Like, I just really don't care. And that has been the saddest thing for me doing these readings when I just want to talk about food. And so often women cannot even tell me what they enjoy eating because all they want to tell me is like how sorry they are that they're fat or their like explanation for being fat. I'm friends with so many fat activists and people who promote body positivity, and I got exposed to that really young, right, girl? And so I'm kind of at the place of giving zero fucks about my weight. And, you know, truth be told, like, I would like to be thinner just because I have a closet full of amazing clothes that I could wear before I got pregnant. Beyond that, I don't really, like, walk around feeling like I've done something wrong, you know? And so that's where I'm trying to get women in this reading, is this idea that food represents our fundamental connection to the earth. And that sounds really boring. Like, if you're someone who wants to lose weight, like, you don't really care about food being your fundamental connection to the earth. But so often when I do these interviews, I ask women how conscious they are when they're eating, right? So it's like, well, do you set a place for yourself at the table? Like, how are you dressed? Are you, like, you know, eating with a tray on your boobs, just like shoveling it in front of the TV? Like, are you even noticing what you eat? And that's the reality for so many people. Like, they are just not conscious in any way of what they're eating. Or they have this idea that I can give them a superfood or a recipe or a regimen that is just suddenly going to make their body beautiful. But I don't think, like, the higher spiritual purpose of food is about, like, just conforming to a particular Western ideal of what a woman's body is supposed to look like. Like, I don't think that that's, I don't know. And also I just think, like, it's such a scam, all these weight loss regimens. Like, it's just $1 billion industry, because if you really want to lose weight, it's not that difficult on a very mundane level, right? Like, if I just said, why don't you just eat rice and vegetables, like a modest amount, boom, great diet, you know, like, right. You could drop a lot of weight. I mean, and everyone kind of knows that. Like, everyone has that knowledge, and yet we're so hoping that it's not really that boring, because we get so many other things out of eating. A lot of people eat for social reasons, right? It's like you go out to celebrate with friends, and that's such a bonding thing to share. And especially like you with Ceres and Pisces, Pisces is all about having no boundaries, right? So to get to eat with other people is a great way to kind of like break down some of those walls, and you're having the same experience, these sensual experiences of eating the different textures and the animal flesh, and you know, it's very, very bonding.
My last, like, official boyfriend and I, we would always fight because I always wanted to go out and eat. I didn't want to cook because I wanted, like, the dining experience. It wasn't just about the food. It was actually sitting at a table, having, like, the silverware, and, like, having somebody take my dish away and wash it, you know? So for me, eating the ritual also is a huge deal.
I mean, what I would suggest for you, because you have Mars and Pisces in the 10th house, like, spiritualizing your food experience is going to be really important for you. You know, like, so do you say a prayer before you eat?
No.
So I don't know what the prayer would be or to who, but, you know, here's the other thing that I connect Ceres with, which is so fun. I think Ceres also is a place in the chart where we can learn about the deity who is most going to support us in daily life. What I was wondering, because of the Ceres and Pisces, if like maybe an oceanic god or goddess has ever spoken to you, if you have any connection to that, like to the ocean, or no. I mean, or a figure of just divine compassion, like Kuan Yin, or that's also Pisces, right? It's that Christ-like energy.
To be honest, one of the things that I don't identify with in terms of Pisces is this like Christ-like, gentle energy.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know, because you have Jupiter. We've talked about this. You have Jupiter in Cancer, right? You have Sun in Pisces conjunct the South Node. And so, I mean, you're just kind of a huge fount of Piscean ookiness here.
I definitely, from a young age, like, I kind of got it, like that it was, the mystical thing, like, from a young age. Nobody had to teach me that. I kind of always understood it. But I would have to say maybe that, like, I'm very concerned with bottom line, show me the money.
We're actually heading more toward Virgo things because of the past life structure that I use in the chart. So it's like you came in as a Pisces, you came in with all this mystical knowledge, and you're moving toward more of an earthy, embodied sensibility, but it doesn't mean that the spirituality goes away. It just becomes grounded.
Going back to food, like, because I see food as my drug and food as love and stuff, my secret sort of wish is that, because, okay, I read somewhere that Kate Winslet, she, you know how in Titanic she was like really cute but kind of plump, but then she got really slender, like more slender.
Yeah,
like
she got more slender.
Yeah. And I read an interview saying that it's because she went to a nutritionist, and the nutritionist basically told her you shouldn't eat these certain foods because they're causing like an allergic reaction.
Right.
So she stopped eating it, and from what the interview seemed to insinuate, like, she didn't like go on a diet. She just took out some foods, and then she got she got more slender. So for me, I'm just like, are there foods I should not eat? Are there foods I should eat? Like, what foods will make me, like, my skin glow, my body, like, bikini ready? That's, like, my secret wish.
Okay. I love that fantasy as well. Because that would be magic fantasy. If I could follow that. Yes. So I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't do that. I don't recommend specific foods. However, I mean, with this chart, like I said, I just would say explore fish, which I know sounds really strange, but that's just such a classic Pisces association. Like fish oils actually do make your skin really beautiful.
Oh, I take fish oils.
Yeah. And I mean, what I would say is just in terms of changing the ritual around food is just to incorporate more spirituality. So this is going to sound really strange, but if you did develop a relationship with the deity, let that deity guide you toward what foods to eat, which sounds like weird if that hasn't happened to you before, but I mean, there's kind of the potential for, I don't want to say like a high order mystic, because that's not what I mean, but I think that with this much Pisces, you being extremely tapped in to lots of psychic information is not a stretch. Like with that much Pisces, like this is kind of second nature to you. And I think that you've probably had a lot of this sort of schooled out of you. Like you've been told certain information is good and other information is invisible and therefore, it's bad because you can't verify it and it's mystical and it's woo-woo. And I think once you honor these knowings that you have, like you can actually give them some of the same clout. I think Ceres, making it about food, I said that's the doorway to the other things that I think she's about. I mean, I think what Ceres is really about is daily rhythm and how we can make that sacred as daily ritual. I think this is the gift of Ceres, is like this sacred time. Because when we enter a sacred state like that, we have this experience of, like, I want to use pagan holidays as an example, right? Like, let's say you celebrate Samhain every year. That's like the Halloween. Some people say Samhain, but I've heard it on good authority that it's Samhain. So let's say you do that every year, like I have been doing for 20 years. And so when you're in that ritual time, in ritual space on Samhain, you have this sense of like, oh, it's this time of year again. And it's kind of like being in dream time and space, where like, when I'm in ritual in Samhain, I can remember all the other times I've been in ritual for Samhain before. It's sort of like a date marker. Like when you're in a dream and you're having a certain experience, and you're like, I've been here before, and you remember other dreams that you've had about this exact thing that you would not have in conscious life, right? So let's say you do a ritual every month for the full moon. And so there's this kind of like sameness that carries over. That's the ritual element. It's a repeated thing, right? Um, and so I think it just gives you this very visceral sense of rhythm, right? Like the moon's full again, or it's sown again. And that's actually very nourishing and necessary for us because we live on the earth and we're subject to all these rhythms. But we tend to just completely ignore them, much like we just completely ignore whatever the fuck we're putting in our mouths, where it came from, how it was processed, you know. And so I think Ceres, as the natural ruler of Virgo, my theory, there's a kind of earth stewardship that goes along with this planet. And that's where most of us are failing. And that's where the entire population of the planet is failing. Like, we're not living in harmony with nature. I think even when people are eating really healthy and are a good weight, they have so much anxiety or angst. Like, I'm not doing it right. Is there a superfood I could find? Is there a better diet? Like, could I have something even better? And I think the reason we're all so anxious and upset about food is because we are so fundamentally disconnected from the earth. Right? Like, most of us never see the place where our food came from. Like, we get it in a box from the store. And like, this sense that it's alive and that it's an offering from the earth, like, that's the information we should be taking in. And instead we're taking in this idea that, like, I hope it's, you know, only 800 calories or something, so I don't go for my diet or whatever.
This sounds kind of like, you know, that concept of intuitive eating. But the thing is, how many of us actually trust ourselves enough to know that, oh, like, my body says it wants Cheetos, so I should eat Cheetos. But, I mean, is it because our body really wants it, or is it because we're trying to fulfill or numb a need, you know? So it's sort of like a fundamental feeling of you don't trust yourself. From what I'm hearing about my series, and just series in general, is that, so maybe like my series in particular, maybe if I do a ritual first before I eat anything, then maybe it'd be easier for me to really see if it's something my body actually wants. Like, if I stop and I'm just like, hey, before I, you know, like, eat these, like, 5 hamburgers, like I usually do, you know, like, talk to, like, the higher parts of myself. And then maybe, like, once I talk to the higher parts of myself, I'll eat 1 burger and then I'll just feel, like, satiated.
100% of what you said, I agree with. So I used to be pretty overweight when I was a teenager, but, like, even now when I say that, I don't think I was that overweight. I think that was just, like, the teenager's perspective, but I was in so much agony and pain about it. And my therapist gave me this book. I forget the name of the woman, but she's, like, a big weight loss writer, like Genevieve someone. And the first thing in the book was just give yourself permission to eat whatever you want. Like, do not regulate it at all. And I lost so much weight by doing that. And so, you know, in a weird way, so you asked me, like, well, will the Ceres reading help me lose weight? I think by just treating ourselves differently in the way that we consume food, yes, absolutely, can ultimately result in you having a lot more control.
My main takeaway from this reading is something that I've never considered before, is to actually do some sort of thing, a ritual. It could be talking to a deity, but it could also just be like meditation. Maybe for like a minute or two, just be like, whoa, before I eat and stuff myself and use it as a drug, let's, you know, totally become present. This is not something that I do. You know, I think most people don't do that. So my main takeaway is 30 seconds, 1 minute before eating anything, putting anything in my mouth, just become present and then eat and see what happens.
Oh my God. And then I lost so much weight by doing that as well. And I always felt like a totally out of control compulsive eater. I was like anorexic, I was bulimic, I was overeater, I was the whole nine. And just by becoming conscious of what was going in my mouth, like, it was just a life changer. And it's hard to sustain. I mean, I'm definitely not in that place now because I have a toddler. So I'm no longer like conscious of what's going in my mouth. I just kind of like grab it when it's available and then go chase after him. But it can definitely transform. The food is just like this thing that keeps us alive. It doesn't have to have all these other associations and attachments that we load into it. Like, oh, it's going to do something for me emotionally or whatever. That's mostly why people eat, right? Emotional reasons. So if you can kind of decouple those things from what the food actually is, I think you can tap into a huge spiritual hunger that you have. And I'm saying that because of the Mars conjunct Ceres, right? So another sidebar here about Ceres, which I didn't get to talk about. So people who study magic and mysteries will talk about the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece as the most potent mysteries of all time, right? Like people are still trying to resurrect those mysteries and figure out what happened. And those were the mysteries of Demeter, and she was a grain goddess, right? And they were still performed under the auspices of Ceres as well, right? So there's a strong like mystery school ritual component association with these goddesses, okay? So the fact that you have this planet so prominent at the top of your chart conjunct Mars, which means you actually have to put it into action and do something about it, I read that as like a huge spiritual hunger. And so if like you can maybe take the energy out of the food and explore that other bigger hunger, there are untold mysteries that could open up to you.
Definitely the hunger for food can be transferred to the hunger for something else. And everybody's chart is different, right? So it's not like everybody's going to get generally the same rating as me. Some people might have a completely different rating.
That is so true. So just to give an example, people who have Ceres and Mercury together, or like they might have Ceres and Gemini, food is so much about like connecting to other people, you know, or exploring new cultures, or just like getting out in your environment. So I have a friend who just knows every restaurateur on her block. Like it's such a foodie. Like all her friends are chefs, and like if she didn't have food, she wouldn't have any friends. Like all of her friends are kind of connected to food. Another woman told me a story. She has Ceres in Sagittarius. And growing up, her mom was always like seeking out people to help teach her like different ethnic foods. So she's like, oh, we'd like make friends with a Jewish woman and then go cook Jewish food. And then we like met a Chinese woman and we're always going over to that house. And so she got to have that Sagittarian experience of world travel through food, right? And then people with Ceres and Scorpio, right, that dark, shadowy energy, oftentimes those are people who are dealing with some like really deadly food allergies. Like a food is toxic to them, it's poison to them. And it's possible they had a parent who had toxic attitudes toward them, right? Or who did some serious damage. And so, I mean, it's really just been kind of all over the map. And it's funny because people with Ceres and Aquarius, that's the Uranian sign, right? Technology. They tend to be really into the superfoods, like latest trend, right? I don't even know what these latest trends are. Like, you might, I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but I talked to one man with Ceres and Aquarius, and he wanted a $1,200 blender so he could more efficiently get all like the doses of the nutrients. I'm thinking of some recent readings I did, and it was all about sex. It was all about like, okay, how's your sex life? Because this is really where the hunger is wanting to manifest, right? And I mean, that's just, that's not coming up as vibrantly, I guess, in your chart as it does in some other charts. Like if Ceres is in a fire sign, and you know.
Thea has been so gracious to give a 15% discount to any of her other readings to viewers of Which Is in Wine. If you use the code CHAWEON, I'll put it down in the description box below. So if you do that, it's like a 15% discount from the natal readings, love readings. The food reading, it's so well priced. The discount code isn't for the food reading, but for everything else. I mean, 15% discount, first of all, 2 hours for a natal reading. That's an amazing deal because you're knowing everything about yourself according to the stars. And I'm so excited to get one from you in the future. Like, just from what you're telling me about the food, if I can get this much information just from food, I'm excited to know what else is in my chart.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just honored that you were curious about the reading, and our connection has been so fun. So I love reading your chart. You're just such a fascinating, fun person to read for, and you seem very much like a Pisces to me. I just wanted to add, so.
The fact that I have Ceres conjunct Mars up in like fucking noon on my natal chart in the sign of Pisces. I mean, the thing that I want to do the most is never go to the grocery store and forever remain a child by ordering food. If I do that, I'm always going to feel frustrated. There's always going to be a hunger inside of me. This hunger inside is not about food only. It's not about literal food. It's about something deeper than that. My friend is telling me that I should look up a recipe right now on my phone and then go to the grocery store right now. I'm scared. I'm literally scared. I don't know why. Don't laugh. It's scary. What am I making? I have a shopping basket. Oh my god.
한 거만 골랐어요.